Hey man, I got a guy on my channel that's gonna blow your mind. Ooh, it's about to be on and popping on this strong inspirations. Man, I'm telling you, I give you some good Black history. It's Black history at its finest on strong inspirations. Well, how about this one? I got one more little anecdote where I give it to you straight, no chaser. I let them tell it. I might just come up with a couple questions and we roll with it so that you can understand this history in layman's terms. All right? So hit the subscribe button to the channel. It's free. Don't cost you nothing to subscribe. Hit the like button on this video because, man, this brother told me he gonna tell you something that's gonna blow your mind. So hit the like button. Hit the notifications bell because when the video come up, you can be the first to watch it. You get a ding on your phone. And then, my brothers and sisters, my friends in the Strong Inspiration family, tell somebody about the channel. Don't keep this to yourself. I know what you're doing. You're going out, now that the virus is kind of calmed down and you telling people, you calling people, say, hey, man, I know all this good history. Then you don't want to tell them where you know it from. You want to act like you reading books and you've been chilling and just getting all this knowledge and you getting it from Strong Inspirations. Share it with them young people. Share it with them older people so that this thing can happen and everybody can understand some of this, the real story to Black history. And then, the other thing I want you to do is watch my movie. I put 2 years of my life in this film. And then, check it out, I had the premiere here, I'm in Detroit, y'all know. I had the premiere in Detroit at the large Black History Museum. I had the nice jacket on, the spotlight and everything was packed. And then the next week I was in Harlem, New York, showing this film. And then the week after that, I was in Hollywood, California, showing this film on my dime. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. 75 powerful minutes of good Black history with an emphasis on the Black business. All right? And it's on Amazon. So you can get the DVD there. This is the DVD, or you could just stream it on your computer via Amazon. And then the other thing I want you to do, my brothers and my sisters, I want you to read my book. I wrote this. It is good. One guy sent me a note. He said, man, that's the most comprehensive, easy to read Black history book he ever ran across. I number the facts. And what I don't do is I don't give you no commentary. I just let the facts stand on itself so so it's right there in front of you. And it's over 200 of them. And it's called Black Business Book. Now the book and the movie is on Amazon. And it's also on my website, businessintheblack.net. Before I go, my man, he writing something down, so I got another minute. Let me tell you something, boy. Let me tell you what STRONG stands for. STRONG stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that's what this guy that's about to come on is. He's a strong brother. Brother, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you, Anthony, for having me on. And my name is Corey Rogers. I work at the Lucy Laney Museum of Black History in Augusta, Georgia. We are the largest African-American history museum in what we refer to as the River region. So for your listeners and your viewers who may not know what the River region is, when you're in my neck of the woods down in Augusta, Georgia, the River region is that area both in Georgia and South Carolina in and around the Savannah River. And so there are several counties in Georgia, several counties in South Carolina that encompass this, roughly 900,000 to 1 million people. And so our museum, exactly 30 years ago, opened in June of 1991 with a focus on the life and legacy of one of the great visionary educators, Lucy Craft Laney. But since then, Anthony, we have become a comprehensive museum looking at various pieces of Augusta history, Georgia history, United States history, but seen through the lens of the Black experience. And so Miss Laney is certainly the focal point, but we try to tell a more comprehensive approach to African-American history.
I love it. Let me ask you this. How you get to like this, man? How you choose this for a career path for yourself? Has Black history always been something you like to do?
Well, I'll tell this to you and your audience, Anthony. Sort of history in general has been a love of mine. Now, growing up, I never thought that I could make this into a profession per se, but there were several things that led me to this path.
Let me stop you right there. Hold on. Where'd you grow up?
So I'm a native of Augusta, Georgia.
Oh, you're a native. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, born and raised in Augusta.
All right.
And I'm glad you asked that, because in the school system here in Augusta, I had several wonderful educators, elementary, middle, and high, and they kind of steered me in that direction. So I had teachers that introduced me to different facets of history that then allowed me, that sort of piqued my curiosity. But not only that, and this sort of goes to the heart of many Black families. Growing up, I had some wonderful storytellers in my family. And my grandfather told amazing stories, most of them true, but every once in a while, you kind of stretch it here or there.
Sure.
And my dad and my uncles told amazing stories, and people even called me a great storyteller as well. So I think in many respects, Anthony, sometimes I catch myself sort of channeling the spirit of a West African griot and sort of taking it to that level. But I think those stories that, the African-American experience is rooted in the oral tradition.
Sure.
And so having those stories passed down from generation to generation, coupled with having a solid base in the school system in Augusta, and I think those two arenas made for the perfect storm for me.
I got you. Now, is there a story in your family like that y'all, like going back, did you do any research in your family where the slavery is and all that kind of thing?
My mother, who's a Rivers, is from Charleston, South Carolina. And my dad, Rogers, is from Columbia, but my father's family hails from Huntington, West Virginia.
Okay.
So you have sort of this mix of Irish, African-American, the indigenous population coming from that area. And then you have a more traditional African-American rooted family structure coming from my mother's area.
Now, when we talk about the rivers in Augusta, is there, for example, give me a Black history story in Augusta.
Sure. Well,
good or bad, yeah.
Well, you really don't have to look far when it comes to the African-American experience in Augusta. The story of Lucy Craft Laney in and of itself is a pretty extraordinary one. She was born in Macon, Georgia, about an hour and 30 minutes from Augusta in 1854. Her parents were at one point enslaved, but they purchased their freedom. Her father was a carpenter and a Presbyterian minister. And he and his wife, David and Louise Laney, had 10 children. Miss Laney was one of those 10 children. Miss Laney and her siblings looked at education as the vehicle to lift themselves to another level.
Right.
And so they did like what hundreds of thousands of other African Americans did post-Civil War. They went to college, they went to school. Miss Laney enrolled at Atlanta University, what is today Clark Atlanta University, enrolled there in 1869, graduated in the very first graduating class of the normal school of Atlanta University in 1873. She taught all over the state of Georgia, She comes to Augusta in the 1880s. And by 1886, Anthony, she had chartered a school in Augusta and named it in honor of a woman, a Northern white Presbyterian that she met in 1886 in Minnesota. And they met in Minnesota because Miss Laney was trying to garner financial support for her school. Miss Francine Haynes gave Miss Laney $10,000 of seed money to construct and build a school, and she named the school in her honor. So the Haynes Normal and Industrial Institute was established in 1886, and it stayed here in Augusta in its original form until 1949. During the time that Miss Laney was here, she created one of the first private boarding schools for African Americans, the first nursing school for African American women, one of the first primary schools for African Americans, and she was one of 30 co-founders of the Augusta chapter of the NAACP. As a matter of fact, Anthony, let me throw out a name that your audience will be familiar with.
Go ahead.
February of 1917, a young man from Harlem, New York, entered Miss Laney's residence. Now, I walk these same corridors every day for the past 17 years, and I'm still awed by the fact that James Weldon Johnson came to her house, Lift Every Voice and Sing fame, but at the time he worked for the NAACP, and he helped them charter the Augusta branch. So Miss Laney's story is one of local and state importance, but she also had a national presence. As a matter of fact, Anthony, let me kind of put one more nugget out here for you. And I think your audience will appreciate this.
Yeah, go ahead, man. I ain't got no.
Miss Laney, Miss Laney, one of her crowning achievements, in my opinion, was the fact that she was able to mentor the next generation of young African-American women who wanted to go into education. And one of those young women who worked with her in Augusta for one academic year was a young lady by the name of Mary McLeod Bethune.
Woo!
So Mary McLeod Bethune worked under the tutelage of Miss Laney. And it wasn't by chance, Anthony. Mary McLeod Bethune, born in Maysville, South Carolina, was educated at what is today Barber Scotia College in North Carolina, an HBCU supported by the Presbyterian Church.
Yeah.
And because of those Presbyterian connections, she worked with Miss Laney. And so Miss Laney had this profound impact on the people around her. And so that is why in June of 1930, Dr. Mordecai Johnson, legendary president of Howard University, referred to Miss Laney as the mother of the children of the people in Augusta.
Whoa.
And that's how we remember her to this day.
Yeah, now let's just go back here a little bit. What was she, a tall lady, short lady, stout lady? How did she, be so strong-willed like that? Do you know?
Well, I tell you what, I kind of joke, Anthony. Miss Laney was not tall by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. And several of her educators at her school were pretty short in stature. However, there's something I noticed early on in talking with students who attended her school. Some of them knew her personally.
Right.
Anytime they mentioned Miss Laney's name, anytime they mentioned the name of one of her teachers, they would sit up straight. They would just sit up straight.
She cracked the whip, what we might say.
Exactly. There was a level, but you know what, Anthony? Kind of dig a little bit even deeper into that.
Yeah.
There was a level of respect. There was a level of admiration that teachers had 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago.
Yeah.
Some of that has been lost on us today.
Sure.
And so the teacher, the educator, had the same amount of respect and disciplinary license as a parent.
Yeah.
So Miss Laney definitely cracked that whip, no doubt.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Anthony, one of her teachers, a legendary coach here in Georgia, who attended Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. He actually carried a paddle with him for his football players. And so it was called the Board of Education. And he made sure that they stayed in line. And so Miss Laney was a prime example of what you can do. It didn't matter your height. It didn't matter your skin complexion. Respect was respect. And she commanded a lot of respect.
Well, was she, okay, since you said complexion, was she a light or darker complected lady?
She was a darker complexion.
Oh, she was, really?
Sister. Okay. But she had a way about herself. She never married, Anthony. She never married. She never had any children in a biological sense.
Yeah, sure.
But by the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century, she had a national reputation. Dr. Du Bois was a good friend of hers. And on several occasions, the Augusta chapter of Atlanta University would invite him here to speak. Just as on the other side of that equation, there was a local minister here in Augusta, the Reverend C.T. Walker, and he gained international acclaim when he took a trip to the Middle East in the 1890s. And everybody talked about this, quote, young colored minister from Augusta, Georgia, traveling all over the world. Well, Reverend C.T. Walker was very good friends with Booker T. Washington. So just as Du Bois would come to Augusta to lecture with Miss Laney, Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver would come from Tuskegee to spend time with C.T. Walker. So a lot of our local icons attracted many of the national personalities that would come here. A young Marian Anderson sang on the campus of Miss Laney's school when she was just starting out her career.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Let me say, what you got me to thinking though, my man, is that even though slavery is still just, newly stopped, Black folks already had the fortitude to take it on the national level. Because how did this lady here out of Augusta travel through Jim Crow and all that other stuff to Minnesota or to wherever she went to find the money? That really was some tenacity and some fortitude on her part. Yeah, it had to be even a dangerous trip for her to decide to do that.
Well, I think, I think, Anthony, one of the points you just made is spot on, and that is the generation of African Americans coming out of slavery into freedom, regardless of whether you were a free person of color or you were enslaved pre-Civil War. There was a sense of urgency after 1865. Okay. Think about it, if you will. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution gave Black men the right to vote, gave citizenship rights to African Americans, and freed 4 million enslaved persons. So I think there was this sense of urgency between 1865 and 1890. And what did you see? You saw African Americans building businesses. You saw African Americans creating schools. You saw African Americans going into the military. As a matter of fact, one of Miss Laney's classmates at Atlanta University was Henry O. Flipper. See, Flipper was from Georgia, born enslaved. But his legacy is remembered through West Point because Flipper would become the first African American to graduate from West Point.
That's right.
But he and Miss Laney were classmates at Atlanta University. But to your point, Anthony, about Miss Laney's travels and her attitude, she had a get out of my way type attitude.
Love it. I love it.
There was nothing that would deter Miss Laney from getting the necessary resources to educate young Black students. And that was her whole focus. When Governor, future President Jimmy Carter honored her in August of 1974 with a portrait that still hangs in our state capitol in Atlanta, the artist that was commissioned did two things. And I think this encapsulates Miss Laney's legacy. He put children in the portrait and he put a book in the portrait.
Yeah.
Her entire adult life was spent educating young African-American students and providing a quality lifestyle for them.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is look at her resume. What did those students do after they graduated?
Yeah.
Doctors, lawyers, educators, college professors. And one of her graduates, Frank Garvin Yerby, who actually worked in your hometown during World War II in the 1940s.
Okay.
Frank Yerby became the first Black author to achieve millionaire status in the 20th century from the sale of his books. So he is a prime example of the type of student she produced here in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay. You rolling, man. You rolling, brother. Okay, but you know I got to throw some salt on it, man. The salt is this. Did anybody not like her? Did anybody try to stop her from doing what she's doing? I'm talking. I ain't talking about Black folks. I'm talking about them racists. Did they ever try to, run one on her?
Yeah, I think that from the work that we have done, the research that we have looked at, there really wasn't any types of overt obstacles. Now, obviously, there was the onset of legal segregation.
Sure.
So, right as she's creating these institutions, de facto segregation is giving way to de jure, to legal segregation. So, like others, she's having to kind of play out in her mind how to get around some of these barriers.
Right.
I think joining the NAACP, having a progressive attitude about voting, having a progressive attitude about women's rights, I think this was her way to get around and get over some of those obstacles.
I got you.
Was she personally targeted by individuals?
Okay.
Not that we know of.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that there were others in Augusta that were not personally targeted. And so she was fortunate enough that she was able to remain steadfast, and she had the fortitude to pretty much overcome anything, whether it was racism or sexism.
So it's not like the KKK showed up at it and tried to burn the school down, and no stories like that.
No. As a matter of fact, no, they didn't have any specific incidents like that. But I'm certain, Anthony, that there were those who probably looked at Miss Laney and said, what is this woman trying to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is she trying to teach these young kids Latin? And why is she trying to teach these young kids biology? And Miss Laney's rebuttal to that was, I am preparing these young students for anything the world has to throw at them. And sure enough, most of her graduates were very successful.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because and I it's always some of that dynamic, in terms of what them racist people do to you. But I guess what you got me thinking is, how did she get to be that bad? No, man. I mean, it's incredible when 4 or 5 years ago you had to be yes sir, yes ma'am. You under the threat of getting beaten, hung, and lynched, and all that. And in that short period of time to go from that to something so great.
Well, I think one good aspect about Miss Laney, Anthony, was that, she was her own boss. So in many respects, even though she received funding from both white and Black philanthropists, she really didn't have to answer to too many people.
I love it.
And so I think that was one level of her success, but also one level of her attitude. It kind of reminds you a little bit, Anthony, of why a lot of our ministers became leaders in the civil rights movement.
Yes.
Because if you were in a self-contained church where you don't have to answer to anyone outside of your community,
okay,
then you have sort of that leadership structure that allows you to do those things.
I love it. Now, in Augusta, where were the schools located? Were they in the city or in the rural area or what?
Well, you had a little bit of both, but Miss Laney's school, the Haynes Institute, was located right at the heart of the African-American community. And there are several, there's several Black communities in Augusta, but the main community, the one that people recognize to this day as sort of the epicenter, was located along a street that was then called Gwinnett Street.
Okay.
And in 1976, the president emerita of Morehouse College, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, came to Augusta, Georgia, and they rededicated the name of Gwinnett Street in honor of Miss Laney and the Reverend C.T. Walker. Okay. So, Anthony, if you visit Augusta, you might come down Laney Walker Boulevard.
Okay, I love it.
And that is currently the name of the street. That was the major thoroughfare. That's where Miss Laney's school was located.
Now, is the building still standing? Any of the buildings still standing?
Unfortunately, the only original part of the school, because today it's Lucy Laney High School, but the only original part, interesting enough, Anthony, is her gravesite. So she's buried on the campus of the school. But unfortunately, in 2014, the Cauley Wheeler building was torn down, and that was the last surviving structure from the original school.
Okay, okay. Now, let's just go as we, for the time we have left. What's at your museum? What kind of exhibits and things like that, and what's the name of the museum, and so on and so forth?
So the name of the museum is the Lucy Craft Laney Museum of Black History. As I mentioned at the onset or the outset of our talk, the Laney Museum is the largest African-American history museum in the greater Augusta or the River region. We have 4 permanent collections. We have the Laney Room or the Laney Collection. We have the Alice Davis Collection, the Ebony Legacy. The Ebony Legacy, Anthony, is a photographic collection of prominent Augustans, from James Brown to Lawrence Fishburne, Jesse Norman to Butterfly McQueen, Wycliffe Gordon to Frank Yerby. We also have the Pilgrim Insurance exhibit. The Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company was one of the largest Black-owned insurance companies during the Jim Crow era. Founded in 1898 with $2.50. By World War II, they were worth over $8 million. So we have an entire room dedicated to Pilgrim. And then lastly, Anthony, we have what we call the Delta Room. My museum is also the sorority house for Delta Sigma Theta sorority, the Augusta alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. And so Miss Laney's niece, Louise Laney, died in a house fire in this home in the museum in 1986. The members of her sorority rebuilt the home and then turned it into a nonprofit so they could have a meeting spot, but also a museum. And that's how we came into existence.
I see. I love it. I love it. I love it. What's the website for the museum?
So the website is www.lucycraftlaneymuseum.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, and we have a variety of activities from time to time, new exhibits. As a matter of fact, we have an exhibit that we still have up because it was so popular, but it'll be coming down soon. It's called Augusta's Women of Excellence, and it features a variety of women who have excelled in their chosen fields of endeavor. One woman in particular, Amanda America Dixon Toomer. Amanda was the wealthiest African-American woman in the United States in the 1880s and 1890s.
Really?
And she inherited her wealth from her father. So these are some of the people.
Oh, okay. You got to tell that story though, brother. Who was your father, man? Who was this guy, man?
So, to kind of give you the Cliff's Notes version, Amanda was born about 50 miles from Augusta in a little area called Hancock County. Sparta, Georgia was kind of the seat. Sparta was the seat of power for Hancock County. Her father was a wealthy white cotton planter. Her mother was a 13-year-old enslaved girl on the plantation. Her father raped the 13-year-old girl, and that produced Amanda. The father at some point must have had a change in his heart or whatever the case is, Anthony, but he brought both Julia, the 13-year-old girl, and then later Amanda into his home. And as Amanda grew older, he gave Amanda everything. In 1885, he dies. And in his will, he leaves everything just about to Amanda with one provision. The white members of the family not try and take her money. The first thing they did, sued her in court.
Yeah, sure.
And guess what happened?
They
in
lost.
1886, an all-white, all-male jury in the deep South, in Georgia, ruled in Amanda's favor. And they used the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, equal protection under the law. The white members of the family appealed to the Supreme Court, the Georgia Supreme Court. They lost the appeal. Amanda built a home in Augusta and lived here until 1893. She was worth over $400,000, making her twice as wealthy in the 1890s as Frederick Douglass.
Woo. Man, I guess there's the one other question that comes to mind is, and I love the sisters, no question about it, but it seemed like, didn't they try to make the women second-class citizens, and they even overfought that? You know how we even talk about that even today, you know, they get less salary and stuff like that, and that never stopped them.
No, it never did. I mean, during the civil rights movement, and you know this as well as I do, Black teachers are often paid half of what white teachers were paid. You know, it was so many things that they had to overcome. But, you know, Anthony, I'll just say this, you know, Black folk, we are resilient.
There you
go.
And
I'm often reminded of this fact. You know, we survived 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow. I don't think there's anything we can't do.
There you go. Tell it.
I don't think there's anything we can't do.
Tell it.
When we put our minds to it, when we get together, when we collaborate, when we work together, good things happen. Good things happen.
Tell it.
You know, and so yeah, we had a lot of obstacles, but what I do, Anthony, is I take the energy from Miss Laney and the energy from Reverend C.T. Walker and all of that positive energy, I try to use it every day to positively affect the lives of young people in the Augusta area.
I love it.
And to tell these stories.
I love it.
And so I know many of them had a hard road, but I'm going to honor that legacy by keep on keeping on.
There you go. One more thing. Did Miss Laney have a slogan that she said, or you know what I mean? A little motto that, you know, like in a book that she always said that we can close out on?
Yeah, she didn't have a motto per se, but I think that those words I spoke that about her being the mother of the children of the people, I think tells you everything you need to know about the type of person she was.
I got you.
The fact that she had no family biologically of her own, but everyone viewed themselves as a part of her family.
I got you.
And think about how powerful that is, and think about what we can do if we reach beyond just our immediate family to affect the lives of others.
Right on. Everybody, man, I told you, my man was going to put it down, and he put it down about a sister. and them other sisters in the DST helping keeping that history alive. I appreciate all of y'all, no question about it. This is what we do on Strong Inspirations. We give it to you, like I tell you. I didn't know where he was going with it. I love it so very much. We're going to come back at him again because he got more stories. I bet you. Watch out. He got more stories. And so everybody, let's go down there to Augusta and let's see that museum. Let's go down there and support that. And again, the website is, one more time.
Yeah, it's LucyCraftLaneyMuseum.com. You can also find us on Facebook.
We're going to put that in the descriptions. And so to you, my brother, I say again, first, I thank you so very much for coming on Strong Inspirations. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. And also I say to you with all sincerity that I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, because we love what you're doing, keeping that history and enlightening them brothers and sisters and them other people down there in Augusta and across this country as you do. Everybody, buy my movie, read my book. Let's go. Thank you so very much for being on the channel. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.